COP26 is the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference. For nearly 3 decades, the United Nations has been bringing together almost every country on Earth for global climate summits, called COPs, which stands for Conference of the Parties. In that time, climate change has gone from being a fringe issue to a global priority. This year is 26th annual summit, giving it the name COP26. With the UK as president, COP26 took place in Glasgow, Scotland. In the run-up to COP26, the United Kingdom worked with every nation to reach agreement on how to tackle climate change. World leaders arrived in Scotland alongside tens of thousands of negotiators, government representatives, businesses and citizens for 12 days of talks. Pledges announced at Glasgow methane, coal, transport and deforestation could nudge the world 9% closer to pathway that keeps heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius, according to a study by the world's most respected climate analysis coalition, Climate Action Tracker. But it still leaves the world heading towards climate catastrophe. Anyway, we had the opportunity to hear the speeches of many world leaders at the beginning of this summit. So now, we're going to hear the top 3 most interesting ones according to Be Happy Work and Travel. Number 3. Simon Kofe, Tuvalu's foreign minister.
We are living the realities of climate change, sea level rise, as you stand watching me today at COP26. We cannot wait for speeches when the sea is rising around us all the time. Climate mobility must come to the forefront. We must take bold, alternative action today to secure tomorrow. Faftailasi, Tuvalu Modetua. Climate change and sea level rise are deadly and existential threats to Tuvalu and low-lying atoll countries. We are sinking, but so is everyone else. And no matter if we feel the impacts today, like in Tuvalu, or in 100 years, we will all still feel the dire effects of this global crisis one day. In Tuvalu, our islands are sacred to us. They contain the mana of our people. They were the home of our ancestors. They are the home of our people today. And we want them to remain the home of our people into the future. This is why this call to you from Tuvalu is not just a political statement. It is a call that reverberates from our 8 islands and our 12,000 people to the international community.
Number 2. Alexander
Thank
Vučić,
you, Your Excellency.
the President of Serbia.
It is my great pleasure to welcome my President, His Excellency Mr. Aleksandar Vučić, President of Serbia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear Sara, at the very beginning I feel obliged to thank Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Her Majesty's government for exceptional hospitality. I feel privileged to represent the Republic of Serbia at this important place and at the highest level World Forum in working on the most important topic of today, promoting climate awareness. We all agree that we must make investment into climate and environment. We all likewise agree that future generations must be educated in order not to repeat the mistakes we made by hurting the only planet that makes life possible. I'm very honored that the Republic of Serbia is co-chairing this year's conference as a non-EU representative of the Eastern Europe Group. In concrete terms, we see special contribution of our expert team in finalizing negotiations on implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which refers to establishment of global market and non-market mechanisms for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, as well as to remaining provisions referring to advanced transparency framework and common timeframes for nationally determined contributions, which are the key provisions of the agreement that have not yet been covered by the decision that is to be adopted by the conference, i.e. all member states. We therefore believe that this is an exceptional opportunity for Serbia to give its full contribution to finalization of negotiations, which we hope will secure full implementation of the Paris Agreement. As a result of strong economic development modeled for Serbia by 2050, the impact of implementation of climate measures to employment will be optimal through new jobs creation and creation of new industries which have not existed so far. 1 billion euro was raised at the first green bonds auction in Serbia, which clearly confirms trust of international investors to our green agenda, but also to economic and political stability of our country. Incomes from green bonds issuance will be used for financing renewables, energy efficiency, sustainable water management, prevention of pollution, and circular economy development and biodiversity preservation. And as you can see, dear friends, my people made a terrific speech for me, but I'm going to add a few more words and a few more questions for those that are coming from big powers and that haven't answered yet on several questions. Number one is how we're going to finance all these activities. We heard a story of $1 trillion that are at our disposal. My question would be, what would be the interest rate? What would be the terms for taking these amounts of money? And actually, how are we going to tackle that issue? Number two, how are we going to treat nuclear power plants? Are we going to shut them all, or we are going to build them more? Then, how are we going to build more renewables if we already started endorsing populist movements against wind parks, new hydropower plants, and are we going to put in jeopardy the level of our public debt to GDP ratio if we raise huge amounts of money? How are we going to treat natural gas, and how are we going to secure decent prices of natural gas, electricity power as well? And I came here using electric car from Edinburgh to Glasgow, but how are we going to do mining and refining of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and many, many other very important minerals? At the end, we all know what is our final aim, what is our final target, but it's not a fairy tale. We'll have to work a lot, we'll have to be 100% dedicated, and we'll have to be more honest to each other. Health of people living in Serbia depends directly on implementation of this agenda, just like health and life of each living being in Earth depends on arrangements that will be reached here and on national implementation of the respective arrangements. The great William Shakespeare wrote that the earth has music for those who listen. Perhaps it is the right time to listen and hear cry of the Mother Earth, because if we lose this race against time, our children will inherit irreparably polluted planet. Thank you very much for listening to me.
And number one, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of United Kingdom.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to COP. Welcome to Glasgow and to Scotland, whose most globally famous fictional son is almost certainly a man called James Bond, who generally comes to the climax of his highly lucrative films strapped to a doomsday device, desperately trying to work out which coloured wire to pull to turn it off, while a red digital clock ticks down remorselessly to a detonation that will end human life as we know it. And we are in roughly the same position, my fellow global leaders, as James Bond today. Except that the tragedy is, this is not a movie. And the doomsday device is real. And the clock is ticking to the furious rhythm of hundreds of billions of pistons and turbines and furnaces and engines with which we are pumping carbon into the air faster and faster, record outputs, and quilting the earth in an invisible and suffocating blanket of CO2. 2 degrees more and we jeopardize the food supply for hundreds of millions of people as crops wither, locusts swarm. 3 degrees, and you can add more wildfires and cyclones, twice as many, 5 times as many droughts, and 36 times as many heat waves. 4 degrees, and we say goodbye to whole cities. If we don't get serious about climate change today, it will be too late for our children to do so tomorrow. I was there with many of you in Copenhagen 11 years ago when we acknowledged we had a problem. I was there in Paris 6 years ago when we agreed to net zero and to try to restrain the rise in the temperature of the planet to 1.5 degrees. And all those promises will be nothing but blah, 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 to coin a phrase. And the anger and the impatience of the world will be uncontainable unless we make this COP26 in Glasgow the moment when we get real about climate change. We in the developed world must recognize the special responsibility we have to help everybody else to do it. Because it was here in Glasgow 250 years ago that James Watt came up with a machine that was powered by steam, that was produced by burning coal. And yes, my friends, we've brought you to the very place where the doomsday machine began to tick. And even though for 200 years the industrialized countries were in complete ignorance of the problem that they were creating, we now have a duty to find those funds. So let us therefore, in the next days, devote ourselves to this extraordinary task, so that we not only continue with a program that is of green industrial revolution that is already creating millions of high-wage, high-skilled jobs in power and technology, taking our economies forward. Let us also do enough to save our planet and our way of life. And as we work, let us think about those billions of beady eyes that are watching us around the world, increasingly edgy and disenchanted. And let us think of the billions more of the unborn, whose anger will be all the greater if we fail. We may not feel much like James Bond, not all of us necessarily look like James Bond, but we have the opportunity and we have the duty to make this summit the moment when humanity finally began, and I stress began, to defuse that bomb, and to make this the moment when we began irrefutably to turn the tide and to begin the fight back against climate change. Yes, it's going to be hard, but yes, we can do it. And so let's get to work with all the creativity and imagination and goodwill that we possess. Thank you very much, and good luck to all of us. Thank you.